Hello, this is Scarlet and Rage podcast coming to you with the regular Monday morning overview of the weekend's activities and particularly the big game of the Ohio State Buckeyes going up against the Michigan State Spartans. So we're going to discuss that, what we saw, where we think this team is headed, what the trajectory of it is. And that's why you tune into this podcast, those of you that do, and those of you that are going to be here in the near future, is you're going on this journey with us, a week by week journey, game by game journey. Both of us have been slightly critical of Ryan Day at times, certainly, maybe you could say even severely critical at times. However, I fully agree with something that he said at the end of the Michigan State game. He said, it's one game at a time. It's not looking to anything in the future. It's not looking to Eugene. It's one game at a time. Next game is Iowa. And that is how you have to approach the season if you're going to get through the grind and win a national championship. So you are with us one game at a time. We are looking at how our Buckeyes stack up to the rest of the country's elite. Particularly this week, we had a very good view at Alabama, Georgia. And so that is what this podcast is about. We are trying to put in context each season, each game. Can this Buckeye team win a national championship? Because that is where the glory is in modern college football. Unfortunately, it's almost like national championship or bust, but that is where we are, especially this season. Rage, how are you feeling after this weekend? I imagine you've got to be feeling relatively good about the Buckeyes. I would think you would be a little bit more mild today, but you never know. There might be something that works you up. But wait, before you answer that, remind me before it's over for me to tell you the most atrocious position group that Ohio State has. I identified it this weekend. It is an atrocious. Fortunately, it's not one that's going to hurt us, but it is an atrocious position group.
Okay, it must not be too much of an important position group, considering you do not believe they're going to hurt us.
Well, it's not going. We'll qualify that, and we'll discuss it when the time comes.
Fair enough, Michael. My feelings towards this team are indifferent this game. I wasn't mad. I wasn't glad. I'm kind of in the middle. There are some positive things to take. There are some negative things to take. If things turned out a certain way, I think my prediction would have been pretty spot on. The things that I thought would happen did happen. I just, Michigan State turned it over more than I was expecting. But, I take it as an indifferent game. I mean, winning 38-7 on the road is a positive. Michigan State, they are, in my opinion, a top 25 team in the country. I believe they are better than Boston College. Yes, they lost to Boston College, but they were also without Jaron Glover and Nick Marsh, their two-star wide receivers. They were on the road, and if they have those guys, they win that game. And they still, without those guys, should have won that game. But, Boston College is a solid team. Boston College went into Missouri and almost won as well. So, indifferent on this game. But one thing I wanted to discuss with you, Michael, the Cincinnati Reds ended their season today, and I believe they finished 9 games under 500. I'm not exactly sure exactly what the stats were. Michael, I know this is not a Cincinnati Reds podcast, but I would be remiss if I didn't speak about them. Michael and I are both diehard Reds fans, even though I've kind of given up my fandom a couple years ago. I just don't watch them anymore, but they do hold a special place in my heart. And it does pain me to see them every year so bad. And it really drives me to the edge of just like massive anxiety. So I try and tune them out. Michael, what are your thoughts on this franchise, man? I don't even know what the right question is to ask, but here we are, another losing season, 6 playoff appearances I saw in the last 44 years. We have owners that don't care, and we have an offense that sucks. We have starting pitching that is good, but a bullpen that sucks, and no depth at starting pitching. So I don't really know where to begin. I just want to touch on them for a little bit here because we are both big Reds fans, and I would assume a lot of our fan base are Reds fans.
Yeah, I would think so. Before I get into all of the negative, Jay, how old were you in 1990?
I was alive when the Reds won the World Series. I was 2 years old.
Do you have any memory of that? Probably not, do you?
None whatsoever, other than my dad preaching Jose Rio to me, and that's it.
I watched every minute of every inning of every game and remember at least 3 of those games relatively vividly. But yeah, that is the last time. And like you said, not many playoff appearances since then. And it's not by accident. It's hard for me. Yes, the Reds hold a special place. Yes, I hope that they could be good, but when you see ownership that's not doing what it takes to be good, it's hard to really get too optimistic. It's just kind of like, yeah, well, we'll see. And so I think a lot of the fan base is there, and it's unfortunate because I don't think it has to be that way. I think Cincinnati can support a team that could spend a little bit more than the Reds typically like to spend. But, they would have to spend wisely. And that's typically what they don't do. They don't spend wisely. When they do give a decent contract, it's a total waste, like to Mike Moustakas. They give Candelaria $14 million. It's like for him to come in and hit about 15 or 16 or 17 homers or something like that. They kind of fix the problem. It's like they'll kind of like attempt to fix the problem, but like it's like a half-hearted measure. And it shows. And I think that this last thing I'll say about the Reds, they really kind of lost me this year with their off the field decisions. First round, we know they need offense. Their offense is terrible. I've never gone to professional games and seen so many guys hitting in the 100s as when I go to the Reds game. And other guys, barely hitting above 200. I mean, our big slugger is Spencer Steer. That's our big RBI guy who hit about 240 with, he did drive in about 90 runs. So I give him credit for that. At least he's getting the runs driven in. But I mean, the guys, we do not have guys who can hit. And everybody in the world thinks that the Reds, with the number 2 stinking pick, are going to take, Condon from Georgia, Charlie Condon. I mean, the guy is 6'5". He's 215, 218 pounds, has a frame that can easily put on another 15 or 20 pounds over the next 4 or 5 years. And in the SEC last year, which is getting very close to minor league baseball. I mean, when you're playing in SEC tournament, in SEC play, SEC team versus SEC team, that's definitely going to be the level of at the very least lower minor league baseball. And a lot of that pitching is going to be double and even AAA level. And so he hit 437 with 37 home runs. He could play first base. We don't really have a first baseman as displayed by this year, which we couldn't really find one. I don't know why we're preserving it for Encarnacion Strand. He hasn't shown anything. If another guy can come up and take the spot, let him come up and take it. And if Encarnacion Strand does pan out, DH him. Or Condon can play left field as well. He's not a stiff. He runs about a 7-flat 60. And he could have potentially been a big bat in the lineup for years to come. And instead, the Reds pick a pitcher that they kind of reached for, Wake Forest. It would have been a good selection if they had about the 6th or 7th or 8th pick. But in the second pick of the draft, it was puzzling.
I agree, Michael. This was like the first time I've really watched a Major League Baseball draft. I was all dead set on the Reds selecting Charlie Condon, and then they draft the pitcher out of Wake Forest. The Reds really have a hard-on for those Wake Forest pitchers, don't they?
Yeah, evidently. I mean, at least Lauder came up.
I like the Lauder pick, but not this one. Nick Kurz,
exactly.
I forget. Yeah. No, Nick Kurz is their position player.
I agree with you. I liked the Lauder pick as well last year, and at that place that they were drafting at. But this pick was just baffling. But Lauder looks like, I mean, he's showing promise. Half a season, not even half a season. Just maybe a little over a quarter season. That's nothing because the hitters don't really know what he has yet. So we won't know anything until middle of the year next year. But he showed promise, and that's good.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of potential there. He's not the pitcher from the Pirates, whose name escapes me. It might
Yes,
be
Skeens.
Yeah, that's right. Paul Skeens,
Yeah,
who's
Paul
dating that
Skeens.
gymnast.
Now I saw Lauder's debut. Actually, I was at the game.
How did he look? How fast is he? How fast is his fastball?
92 to 95. It's a
Not
sink.
quite fast enough.
It's a sinker.
It has a lot of movement on it.
It's a sinker. It's a heavy fastball. It sinks, and so
Okay.
that's fast enough if he can put it in the right spots. And so he pitched well. It was a little frustrating because he only went like 4 1/3 or 4 2/3, and he gave up 1 run. And I think he left a ball out and the guy cranked it out. But other than that, he pitched very well. He just wasn't efficient because he was going deep in counts and he walked a couple of guys, a couple of different innings, but ended up getting out of it. But his pitch count got to where he didn't even make it through 5 innings.
Yeah, I know we don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the Reds. I know we've probably already spent more than our viewers would like, but I mean, the Ellie De La Cruz experiment in the infield needs to end. He's not a pure infielder. He needs to be moved to the outfield. The team doesn't really seem to care about getting players who can put the bat on the ball. They just get guys who try and hit home runs to sell tickets, maybe. I don't know. They've always been an all or nothing offense, but it's mostly more nothing than all. Even in the years they actually made the playoffs, outside of 2012, and which, tore a hole into my soul, losing 3 straight to the Giants.
Yeah.
I mean, that offense is pretty good, but the 2010 offense, they won the Central with. They were an all or nothing offense. And I remember, like, anytime they played good pitching that year, they got shut down. So you knew right then and there they weren't actually really that good of a team. But I don't really know where to begin. I don't know if it's the ownership. It's not the manager. I don't really blame Bell. Oh, what the hell is his first name? David Bell.
David Bell. I mean, he was at least part of a problem because the team didn't know the fundamentals of baseball. And I've never watched a major league team that consistently didn't know basic fundamentals of baseball. So, I mean, I know
that is true. That is true.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, just a disastrous organization. Cleveland is miles ahead of them. And I hate Cleveland more probably than any person in Ohio. I don't know. Do you remember the guy on 700 WLW back in the day, Mark Amazon? He would come on after the Reds games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I loved him. I loved that guy. He hated the Indians too.
Yeah. Yep. So, but yeah, the Reds, I'm not expecting much out of them. Anything will be a pleasant surprise. Bengals basically in a rebuild. Sports is
the Bengals beat Charlotte today.
They sure did. But
Cincinnati
Sports is in shambles right now. Maybe it can rise from the ashes here in a year or two. Let's hope. But Jay, let's get on to a program that is not in the ashes, but is actually soaring high with the Eagles currently and soaring among the nation's elite and passing the eye test, in my view, of being among that upper crust of college football. And that's the Ohio State Buckeyes. 38-7 win. I think I predicted 38-13, Jay. Is that right? Isn't that what I said?
Yeah, no, you got the score a lot closer than I did this time.
Yeah.
A lot closer.
And so, I mean, I was very pleased with what I saw. I mean, they could have, I think that you, framed it nicely when you said that, this is probably a top 25 team. And I think you're right. I think, unfortunately, we probably won't ever get credit for beating the top 25 team because their schedule is absolutely brutal. Their opportunity, they really were hurt, losing that BC game. If they win that, they probably go into Ohio State ranked. And then they have a little bit of grace at only a 1-loss team. And they can probably end up with 8, maybe 9 wins. But they are a solid team. I mean, I think they're probably at least going to go to a bowl. I would think. We'll see. And Ohio State beat them badly. And I mean, they could have beat them, significantly worse than they did. They started playing the backups the entire fourth quarter. And rightly so. There's no reason to do otherwise. But point being, they really, for the most part, not total domination, but badly beat and completely and totally controlled a pretty good football team the other night.
Controlled, yes, I would say late in the second half to the second half itself for sure. There was some scary moments there for the first quarter and a half, though, Michael. But let's just start it off position by position group. Will Howard, I mean, obviously we'll start with him. He's the quarterback. He's the leader of the team, even though I don't believe he's a captain. He's not a captain.
Really?
I don't think. Anywho, Will Howard, my opinion of Will Howard is what he is. He's not a traditional drop back passer. He doesn't have great arm strength, but what Chip Kelly is doing with him is he is getting every little bit of Will Howard's talent out of him that he possibly can. We all know that Will Howard, he can't throw the deep ball. He is very, very much inconsistent, and that's putting it lightly, at throwing the football past 20 yards. But where he's great are on the rollouts. He's great on the screen game. He's great at reading defenses. He was able to move from like his first option to his second option to his third option, which is mostly assisted by the offensive line and the blocking. The blocking on Michigan State was spectacular. The pass protection in this game was spectacular. Will Howard was not sacked one time, and this was a team that was leading the Big Ten in sacks heading into this game. I saw a statistic that Michigan State was leading the conference in sacks. I think they had 15 as a team. They did not register one sack against Ohio State. So that is great by the offensive line play. But with Will Howard, I like what I saw. We know where his deficiencies are. Ohio State did the best they could with the short screen game and everything. The interception was really bad, but he made up for it on a couple throws. Ibuka dropped, I believe, 2 passes, maybe 3. I'm not sure.
He did, yeah.
So
he made up for it. He made up for it, but he did drop.
He did make up for it. So yeah, Will Howard was a solid game. I mean, I'm starting to really wonder if he's ever going to pass like that 350-yard passing game, because I don't know that he's even made it over 300 yards this year in a game.
I don't think he has.
Yeah, and that's a little concerning because these receivers want the ball, man. I mean, the recruits want to see us still throwing the ball, and we're not throwing it nearly as well as we have in past seasons. And we've been the only consistent podcast on that. We have said that Will Howard, he's similar to Kyle McCord and what the productivity of the offense is going to be. It's just that he runs better and reads defenses better, maneuvers the pocket better than McCord. But McCord he can make the NFL throws, and Will Howard can't. Michael,
here's the way I look at it. I think that stats can be incredibly overrated. I'm not saying that you don't need stats. It's not that stats are not important. It's not that they don't mean anything. It's just that they don't mean everything. It's like stars in recruiting. It doesn't mean everything, because clearly there are guys that are lower rated that end up being better than guys that are higher rated. It doesn't mean everything, but it certainly means something, because if by and large, the guys with the highest stars are the best players. And so, stats don't mean everything, but they mean something. And I think that you can have guys that put up really big stats that at the end of the year, maybe at the end of their career at a school or something, like, oh, they didn't win a whole lot, or they didn't win the big games, or they didn't win the games that mattered. And a lot of that comes down to just a few plays. And so if you've got guys that kind of instinctively are able to move those chains, like at key times in a game, they can often don't have to be the guys that throw for 350 yards to win football games. I mean, look at Ben Roethlisberger. He's a great example of that. He didn't put up gaudy stats, but he had a good defense, and he was able to just move the chains like at those key times in games when you had to get that first down and extend the drive. And it seems like, Will Howard at least maybe has a little touch of that he's pretty good at, extending the drive.
Yeah, well, he can run, and he's a bigger quarterback. I think he's like 6'4", 230 pounds maybe. I would say I think Ben Roethlisberger actually did put up some pretty monster stats at times. I remember a couple times he put up like 500 passing yards in his career in a game.
Well, maybe so, but I mean, as far as like season totals, Ben was never a guy that was like at the top of the league, but yet he was a guy that had won multiple Super Bowls, which so few have.
Yeah, true. I will say it's very concerning that the team, I'm not sure that the routes were even drawn up, but there was not one single pass attempt that went over 20 yards in this game, Michael.
Well, there was a couple right about 20, wasn't there?
Yeah, right about there,
Mhm.
but nothing further. And if you're asking me, I want at least two each and every game. Just to, you don't have to complete it, but the defense has not got to know you're going to throw it. And Michigan State definitely schemed Ohio State in a way that they weren't afraid of the vertical pass, because I think they know that Will Howard really can't throw it. So moving on to the running backs.
Jay,
Go ahead.
Before we move on, I just want to stand corrected that Ben Roethlisberger did lead the league in passing 2 times in his career. However, he also had many seasons where he didn't throw for 4,000 yards, and at least I think both of those, at least one of those, being the Super Bowl winning season. So that's what I was referring to with that.
Man, fuck Ben Roethlisberger, that piece of shit racist. I don't even know why we're talking about that fucking rapist on here, but fuck that guy.
So moving on, who we talking about now?
We're talking about the running backs, man. The running backs. So back to the scheme with Michigan State. The running game, while it was good, it wasn't like an explosive major part of our offense Saturday night. I would say this game needs to be known as more of the Travion Henderson game. Quinshon Judkins was bottled up a little bit in this game. Travion had less carries, more yards, higher yards per carry average. Like this was a game that he did better in versus Quinshon. Quinshon's a little bit better receiver, but the running game, while it was good, like Michigan State's got a pretty good run defense. This is not the Michigan State that was under Mel Tucker. They're a solid. They had a pretty solid defense. So I mean, I guess that's not unexpected, but I guess the unexpected part was Ohio State not throwing deep, because Michigan State was stacking the box, Michael. I believe they had 7 in the box every play. So it was making it a little more difficult to run the ball than in games past. And this is like a legit Big Ten defense. This isn't Akron, Western Michigan. This isn't Marshall anymore. This is, Michigan State. And we've seen, they have 15 sacks on the year. Pretty solid defense. But the running game, while good, not spectacular, but just good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was definitely good. It wasn't the blow you away type of run game that obviously we had in the Marshall game, but very solid, and certainly no complaints on my end about the run game.
Yeah, I'm not really complaining. I'm just saying, what I'm trying to allude to is we are looking at, what the best defenses are going to do with better players, like against Ohio State. We know how they're going to scheme them. They're going to play everything close to the line of scrimmage. They're not going to be pressing our receivers, because that is like borderline suicide unless, you have like a couple All-American corners out there. And I'm not sure any team in the country has those, considering what we just saw from Georgia and Alabama. But
right.
I can tell you that there are going to be defenses out there that are more athletic and can take away our run better than even Michigan State. And there is going to come a time where Will Howard and Chip Kelly and Ryan Day, they're going to have to scheme and make the throws down the field, because somebody's going to be out. There is a team out there that is athletic enough to play the short passing game, to clog up the runs, and really press Ohio State to get the ball down the field. I love what Chip Kelly is doing, but there is a clear weakness here, and I see it. And Michigan State sees it too. And Ohio State still didn't throw deep, which is concerning.
Yeah, and I think the the run game, the stats were not like blow you away impressive in any way. But also taking into consideration, those guys didn't play the fourth quarter when it mattered. Those could have been some big carries in the fourth quarter when the game, the opposing defense starts getting worn down. And Quinshon he's the kind of guy, and I think this is kind of what we saw the Akron game. He's the kind of guy, he's like a battering ram. He just runs hard. He runs hard. And he's one of those guys that it could break at any moment, but there's going to be times if he only gets 9-10 carries, it might not break. I think that when you give him 16, 17, 18, 19 carries, the chances are very high he's going to break one or two. I'm not saying take it to the house, but break some big chunks. And, it just wasn't that kind of game where they needed him to do that. But, I still, I'm still, pretty positive on the run game. But yeah, I mean, we don't have a guy that is just going to launch, grenades and bombs, 35 and 40 and 50 yards. But I do think that he at least has a strong intermediate game. He can stretch it, that 15, 18, 20-yard throw. And so, we're just going to have to find a way to work our offense around that. And maybe, occasionally, if the defense goes to sleep, he can hit a longer one. But clearly it's not his, we can't expect him to be great at it. I don't think at this point. It's just clearly not his forte.
I said that week one, Michael. I'm like, he is what he is. It's his 5th year in college. He's not about to all of a sudden develop a deep ball. It's just, he is what it is. Now, the question is, can Ohio State win a national championship with that limiting factor? We shall see. But moving on to the receiving group, what can win a national championship, Michael, is Jeremiah fucking Smith. That guy is a national championship receiver, my friend. My goodness, the 2 catches he made, the one he made over the 2 defenders, and then the one-handed catch he made along the sideline as he went into the end zone from Devin Brown, of all people, on the run. Just spectacular catches. The guy reminds me more and more of Julio Jones. He just basically is the next Julio Jones, I would say. That is the best comparison for him. He is Julio Jones 2.0. He's, same size, same speed, the end around he took. Moving, Emeka Abuka redeemed himself, had a couple nice catches. Yeah, he had some drops, but you know what? He had some really nice catches as well. Led the team in receiving yards. And, Carnell Tate, Mr. Dependable, he's just kind of does the dirty work type receiver. I think he's more talented than Abuka, but he doesn't get featured as much, I guess, based on where he plays and Abuka's experience. But yeah, the receivers played a really, really good game. I wish Ohio State would have thrown it more and featured them more, because I don't think Michigan State had a prayer at covering them. Michael, any thoughts about the receivers?
Yeah, I mean, Jeremiah Smith made a couple incredible catches, and he showed the ability that, not a lot of receivers have. He can go and make a catch when the quarterback doesn't really deserve it. It's not even like he just made a catch, like the quarterback made a good throw, but he made a real good catch. Now the quarterback didn't really deserve this one, and he just made it anyway, and did it twice. And so that can cover up, some sins of a quarterback when you have a wide receiver that has a range like that. And if you remember, Jay, you were right on Will Howard, and I think I was right on Jeremiah Smith, because I said that first week he's got a huge range, and that can be very beneficial to quarterbacks, because it gives them so many different places they can throw the ball that a lot of receivers, you're probably not going to get that catch or that completion.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the longest guy, but he is explosive. He's 6'3", but he's not like one of those guys who's like 6'5" or 6'6". But
well, I know, but did you know his wingspan is as long as Marvin's?
No, where did you see this at?
Bucknuts.
I would not be trusting Bucknuts with that kind of information. That site sucks, man.
I'm just telling you what I read.
Yeah, I know, and like that's the same site as Max Baxendale, right?
Well, that's true, but I'm saying, it was supposedly reported by the the team or something, that when they did the wingspan.
Okay, but the team also put out those like fake 40s back in the day. Remember that they were all inflated? Oh, they were all running 4.2s, and then they go to the NFL Combine. That wasn't right. Remember that?
Well, I know, but I mean, I don't know if they're lying about his wingspan, because that'll get.
I don't know, man. They lied about 40 times. They can lie about a wingspan too. I don't know. I don't know. I need to see it for myself. Not saying you're wrong. I need to see it measured.
40 times are a little fluid, I mean, they can be different at different venues and things. Whereas wingspan, like, that's a static measurement. Like, that's always going to be the same. Like, it is. It is. So anyhow, but point
Yeah,
being,
man.
yeah, I think he's for a 6'3" guy. I think he definitely has a longer reach than than a lot of guys 6'3". I mean, for example, I'm 6'2", and my reach is only about 8 foot, 8'1". There's a lot of 6'2" guys that their reach is 8'5", 8'6". And I think he's one of those 6'3" guys with just a bit longer reach than your average guy.
Okay. Yeah. I would have liked to have seen more Brandon Ennis as well. I know you've played punt return. Man, a lot of people are hyping up Brandon Ennis, by the way, for those punt returns. But outside of the Akron game, he really hasn't done jack shit in the return game, by the way.
Yeah, well, I think he slid. Was that this week or was that last week when he slid? That was last week when he slid.
Last
But
week he fumbled,
yeah.
and he's lucky that Marshall, I forget what the penalty was. They kind of gifted Ohio State with that. But I mean, outside of the Akron game, hasn't done much yet. So I don't know. It's I'm still waiting for him to make an appearance. I think Ohio State does need to rotate him in
He had
early in the game.
He had the nice 4th down conversion catch against Western Michigan. But yeah, other than that, we haven't seen a whole lot out of him. But Jay, let me go ahead and just insert now. It's a good time as we're talking about receivers, because these are kind of receivers, but not the ones we have. And that is the tight end position at Ohio State is atrocious this year. Wow. Yeah.
Fuck, man. I honestly completely forgot about them. They are so irrelevant. What happened? Because I mean, Keenan Bailey looks like he needs fired. I know he did get Jelani Thurman, but what are these guys doing? Bennett Christian fell down on the one attempt to him. Will Kasmerick, I thought he might have been a decent pickup, but it's turning out that the Indiana quarterback, Curtis Rourke, who was the Ohio quarterback last year and transferred to Indiana, it's looking like he elevated that guy. Yeah, the tight end position is a disaster, man. And
where's the kid from Baylor? Is he redshirting this year? The kid who was like a 92 out of Tennessee, Baylor High School. I played against Baylor High School when I was.
I think that's Bennett Christian.
Is that Bennett Christian?
That's Bennett Christian. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't do anything. Will Kasmerick got that personal foul early in the game.
Which one?
After that?
Which one just went out and was wide open for a first down and just fell down? Just slid,
that was Bennett Christian.
Feet slid right out from underneath him.
Bennett Christian.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly we haven't recruited that room fantastically, because you've got a freshman out there who's it doesn't look like he's ready, and then Jelani Thurman hasn't seemed to develop quite like they would like, and then there's nobody else. There's nothing else.
I mean, at this point, you just have to roll with Jelani Thurman because he is the most talented of them. He's the longest. He's probably the fastest. Just put him out there and have him figure it out until he figures it out. And if he doesn't figure it out, then it is what it is. Now, G. Scott is actually, by the letter of the law, a tight end. He's not built like a tight end, but he's the best receiver out of the bunch. And he did catch that 2-yard touchdown over the middle. He was actually the first touchdown of the game went to G. Scott over the middle on 4th down, I believe.
Yeah. I forgot about G. Scott.
G. Scott, man. Yeah. So I guess it's not a total disaster.
He can receive a little bit. He can catch the ball a little bit. He cannot block, but he can catch the ball a little bit.
He's undersized, though. I mean, he's a receiver that was I think he's 6'3" on a good day, but that's small for a tight end. And, your tight ends, in a perfect world, I want them to be at the bare minimum 6'5", so they can grow into those 250-pound bulldozers. I know Brock Bowers, I think he might have been 6'4" at Georgia, so maybe a little bigger. But I mean, G. Scott's the best receiver of the bunch.
I mean, it depends on what kind of tight end they are. I mean, if they're a real good receiver, 6'4" is plenty. 6'3", they better be a real good receiver. But I mean, 6'5", 6'6" is great too. It just gets harder to get the guys who can catch once they get 6'5", 6'6". It's more rare to have the good receivers at that size.
Yeah, I know, man. I'm always I'm selfish when the former Georgia tight end Darnell Washington. That's what I want for a tight end at Ohio State. I want a 6'6", 6'7" guy who's fairly athletic, big, sure hands, can go up in traffic, make the catches. That's what I want from the Buckeyes. But
it's tough to find those guys 6'7", 280.
Yeah, the problem Yeah, go
that
ahead.
that run 4.6 7 40s. That's what he ran, which is pretty darn good for 6'7",
You know,
270
he's from
pounds.
Arizona, by the way.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's from Arizona and went out to Georgia to play football. Like,
Okay.
why? Why would you go from Arizona to Athens, Georgia? Now, Athens, Georgia is a pretty cool place. So I don't know.
Mhm.
I guess, like, of all places, I guess I understand that a little bit. But dude, you're a West Coast kid. Like, what is it about? I don't know. Georgia must have paid him a lot of money or something at the time.
If USC would have had it going, they could have had him. Of course, I don't know if he would necessarily fit USC's offense as good as he did Georgia's, because Georgia's he was just a sledgehammer on the edge in the run game, and he was capable of catching passes. But Bowers was their main pass catching threat at tight end.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Darnell Washington is more of like a power blocker and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, Brock Bowers is definitely more of the receiver. Yeah,
And
man, tight
it
end
helped.
positions. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, and it helped Ohio State tremendously when Washington went out of the game in the Peach Bowl.
You're exactly right. Yep, that is absolutely true. So it makes you wonder who wins that game if he still's healthy and Marvin Harrison is healthy.
Right. Yep. That's a fair
Who has
question.
weighted more? I don't know. Offensive line, man, I don't really have any complaints about them. I thought they did a terrific job. I know the run game wasn't as good, but Michigan State was pinning their ears back, like I said. The pass protection was just spectacular. There is no other word to describe it. Michigan State did not have one sack. I think they had a couple tackles for losses against Ohio State, but for the most part, the offensive line did the job in a game where Michigan State had the edge schematically, and the offensive line still delivered. And I just want to point out that the touchdown where Jeremiah Smith had the one-handed catch would not have happened had Travion Henderson not stepped up and blocked that defender coming off the edge who was blitzing like his hair was on fire. Like, he timed that blitz perfectly, and Travion met him, blocked him, and allowed Devin Brown to get the pass off to Jeremiah Smith. So without that block happening, that touchdown doesn't happen. Or Devin Brown, knowing him, probably fumbles and Michigan State picks it up and runs it back for a touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't recall that exact play, Jay, so I'm not going to comment on it, but because I had kind of gotten up and gone and done a couple of other things at some point at a few points, and I was also flipping back and forth a little bit between the Georgia games, so there may have been a few things I didn't see, but yeah, as far as the offensive line as a whole, yeah, I was pleased with them. I felt like they opened up some pretty solid holes. They did a good job. They protected well. They have their pass protection has seemed to be really good this season from what I have seen. The run block has been a little bit of a problem in recent years. Looked good for the most part this year, other than maybe the Akron game. But yeah, I mean, I'm really pleased with how the line is coming along. It seems that Justin Fry is a pretty good coach. It's just a matter of, can he continue to get the level of linemen that you need to be able to coach? I mean, even the greatest coach in the world can only turn so many guys ranked 88 and 89 into really good, linemen on an elite team.
I don't know that I give Justin Fry the benefit of the doubt here. They didn't pass protect nearly as well last season as they are this season. The de facto change was Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly got here that everything blocking, receiver blocking, offensive line blocking is improved. So Justin Fry is not off the hook, and I would still be looking to move on from him if I'm Ryan Day.
Well,
because Chip Kelly has really solved the blocking.
Even if what I said was true, he's not off the hook, because you can't just coach well at Ohio State. You have to be, he has to be able to get a fair amount of guys ranked between 91 and 95. He doesn't have to get all the 5 stars or whatever. Obviously, nobody gets all the 5 stars, but he doesn't even have to get the 5 stars. But he's got to get those guys, that have some potential. Yes, there's some diamonds in the rough at 88 that by their 3rd and 4th and 5th year could end up being really good linemen. Great. Take a chance on some of those guys. But we've got to, we can't build classes out of those type of guys. Fry is definitely still struggling on the recruiting trail.
I will say that Alabama seems to get a lot of those 5-star players. They seem to get most of like the 5-star offensive linemen. If what Ohio State is doing in receiver recruiting up until this season, Alabama is doing on the offensive line. So I value offensive line more than receiver. That's why Alabama has won so many titles. Michael, off topic, man. What did you think of this game being on Peacock? What did you think of the presentation of Peacock? What did you think of the announcers? I know I have what my opinion is, but what is your opinion?
I mean, Peacock doesn't give a fantastic presentation. I think that they've kind of done that about every time that they've had a game. I like Colt McCoy. I really do. Don't want to say anything bad about him. He's new. I think obviously he hasn't done this long. It wasn't too long ago he was still being a backup quarterback in the league, just in the last year or two. So I mean, he's new at it. But you could tell he hadn't done it a whole lot. It certainly wasn't the greatest announcing that I have heard. But I liked Colt. I thought he had a good attitude. Thought he was positive about the Buckeyes and complimentary about the Buckeyes. So I did appreciate that.
Everyone is ripping on Colt McCoy, but I have a problem with the actual play-by-play guy. I know Colt McCoy isn't very good. He tried. But this guy, his name is Andrew Siciliano. Apparently, he's the Cleveland Browns play-by-play guy because Jim Donovan, if you know him, he actually retired in the summer. So Andrew Siciliano does the Browns play-by-play. And this motherfucker, if you would listen to this game, this motherfucker, I can tell, is openly cheering for Michigan State. This guy is from Northeast Ohio, and he doesn't really – this happened last year too. Not only does the broadcast suck with Peacock, you don't really get it. And not that I hate commercials, but, if you're going to have like some kind of like Peacock commercial thing, don't have music playing. Just mute it or whatever and then bring the game back. But son of a bitch, man, this motherfucker like jizzed in his pants every single time that Michigan State was doing something. And then when Ohio State took control again, it was just kind of like ho-hum, calling a game. Like, fuck you, dude. You motherfucker. Who the fuck are you? Go back to fucking Cleveland. Don't announce our games anymore. I don't like the Browns at all. Seems like a lot of fans in Northeast Ohio seem to be against Ohio State or something. I don't know if he's like one of those guys. I don't know, but I don't want to be on this motherfucker's broadcast ever again. He is the worst announcer in America for TV, and I am not fucking joking around with that. Hey, Michael, you're muted.
A lot of people have gotten very sensitive about Joel Klatt, and I haven't really paid attention to him enough kind of to really have an opinion on it. But a lot of people think that he's really turned against the Buckeyes. I don't know.
I don't sense that.
I mean, yeah, I hadn't.
Not in the games, no.
I just feel like he, tries to call things straight or how they are. So he's not always going to be powdering our backside. At times he might point out, certain things. And I think a lot of people struggled that he was very big on the Michigan train last year. What do you expect him to be? I mean,
he's a Big Ten guy.
He's a Big Ten. Yeah, he's a Big Ten guy. I mean, he's going to be pumped when the team that won the Big Ten is doing well and ends up winning the national championship. I mean, that's it's like the guys over on the SEC network, ESPN. They're pumped up every time the SEC produces a champion. They love it, and so. I don't have a big problem with Klatt. I didn't pay attention to this guy, so I believe you that he was biased towards Ohio State, but I just really wasn't paying attention to him. For somehow my only memories of the announcing was Colt McCoy. I just seems like I almost kind of blocked the other guy out.
Yeah, Colt McCoy, didn't bother me as much. At least he was impartial. This guy is unprofessional. He sucks. Like, I don't want to see him doing Ohio State games anymore. And another person that kind of slides beneath, because Desmond Howard is an idiot, everyone points at him as like the worst ESPN like analyst guy, or not that this person is an analyst, but who really, really has it out for Ohio State, and it's real subtle, but the comments that come out of their mouth every single time Ohio State is brought up. Do you know who that is, Michael?
Who?
Reese Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Reese Davis has it out for Ohio State, man. He always says the most subtle thing, but it adds up. And over time, it's like, this motherfucker really, really dislikes Ohio State. Just certain comments about like making fun of our schedule, and we get the benefit of the doubt on things, but it just doesn't register with people. But he says some of the nastiest stuff about Ohio State that's real subtle, but I'm picking up on it. Most of Ohio State fans aren't noticing it because they pay attention to Desmond Howard. But at least Desmond Howard is pretty open with his dislike of Ohio State.
Yeah,
Reese
it's
Davis
like,
is not.
Desmond Howard's a clown about it. It's like, whatever. He's a Michigan guy. He's wearing his home colors loud and proud. Okay, fine, whatever. We know that. But you're right. Reese Davis does attack Ohio State. Being an Alabama grad, he probably hates Ohio State, as many down in SEC country do. And so be it. Whatever. ESPN generally is more on the anti-Ohio State side than not. And that's just the way it is. That's what we have to deal with, and that's part of being a Buckeye fan.
Yeah, it is. I just wanted to rant about the announcing. It would have been a mistake had we missed how poorly constructed Peacock is, the unprofessionalism, the bad picture quality. It's just a disaster, and there's no reason Ohio State should ever be playing on that network. Save that for fucking Northwestern, or I don't know, another shitty team in the Big Ten. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. The conference sucks, so put one of those teams on there. Michael, the defensive line, they said Tyleik Williams was going to be available, and he didn't play again. So I guess that's kind of positive that, Michigan State actually has a pretty good running attack, and Tyleik Williams didn't play. And, they had 5 sacks in this game, which is great. I mean, I think that's the most we've had all year. Caden McDonald came on in the second half. Now in the first half, it was pretty dicey there. Michigan State was dicing this team up, and it really, let's be real, it had everything to do with scheme, had nothing to do with like what our personnel it is. Well, I guess it does a little bit. We'll get to that. But the defensive line played pretty well overall, considering what they were going up against. It was 4 sacks. The team had 4 sacks. So Mitchell Melton, he needs to play more. Tui Malau actually had a sack. Props to him. There was just in the second half, a lot of these came in the second half when Ohio State changed their scheme. First half, I mean, I don't know what to say scheme-wise. Disaster. Same old bullshit they ran against Marshall and Akron, even though they did more against Western Michigan, but especially against Marshall. Just soft, cowardly bullshit. I just don't know what else to say. The scheme was a disaster. Michigan State's first touchdown of the game was on a quick route to the receiver that was like, at the 10-yard line, and he just kind of ran in, and he didn't get touched until the half-yard line. Like, Michael, I mean, yeah, this defensive line played pretty well, but man, oh man, they are done no favors by Jim Knowles' scheme, especially not in the first half.
Yeah, I agree. He played that same basic super vanilla defense. Thankfully, as he was struggling to stop the run, he did make some adjustments. So I do give him credit for that. Started sending some blitzes, started doing some things with Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs was active one time, Jay. It was just a basic run. And I think Caleb Downs, I don't know if he was blitzing on this or not, but if he wasn't blitzing, good gosh. And I mean, the running back was met right in the hole, tackled and stopped for no gain. And I was like, man, what linebacker just came up and did that? And I looked, and it was Caleb Downs. And so, again, I don't know if he was blitzing on that play, and that's why he was at the line like a rocket. But nevertheless, he was certainly disruptive and was, kind of displaying some of the hype that surrounded him. He was showing that some of it's legitimate.
Yeah. We know he's a talented player. In the second half, they were using him correctly. First half, they weren't. Why in the fuck are our corners 10 yards off the ball against Michigan State? Why are our safeties like 15, 20 yards out of the play? It's like you're taking these players completely out of the play to do anything. Like Caleb Downs is not Malik Hooker. He's not somebody who's just going to glide and make plays all over the field in zone coverage. Like he's got to be in man coverage and a gritty run defender as well. He's not one of those guys who should be playing zone, but man, I tell you what, Michael, like, again, let's go back to what my score prediction was last week. This game was awfully close to being like a tie game at halftime versus Ohio State up 23-7. Michigan State, you know, they had 3 consecutive drives to start the game inside the 20. They failed on a 4th and 1 QB sneak. They had a fumble, which was a great play by Hancock, but nonetheless, Michigan State found, I believe, their tight end or somebody over the middle, and he was rumbling inside the 10 when Hancock barely stripped him out before his knee hit the ground. And then lastly, Aiden Childs, Michigan State's quarterback, this is something that has not been mentioned too much. You remember he fumbled on that one? Well, Ohio State got pressure on him, but do you remember he fumbled that one time inside the 20 and Ohio State recovered?
Yep.
He got face masked on that play and they missed it.
Oh.
They missed it. Like, his head turned, and I looked at it, and Michigan State's message boards pointed it out because, of course, Ohio State's message boards aren't going to point that out.
Yeah.
I paid attention to it, and I'm like, he did get fucking face masked because somebody reached inside his head. It was very sudden. His head turned, and like right when it happened, like he's looking at the ref like face mask, but they didn't. I mean, obviously you can't review a penalty, but if that doesn't happen, because the face mask is what caused him to fumble, by the way. I just want to make that clear. He fumbled because he got face masked.
Right.
That is at least, you know, those are like a couple field goals there that Michigan State gets. I'm not going to call them touchdowns because I'm not just going to reward somebody a touchdown. It's not easy to score touchdowns, but those are at least a couple field goals there that Michigan State has. And now all of a sudden we're in a much different ball game, and Michigan State has momentum in the third quarter. And they're not deflated. This game could have been, you know, a 42-28 type game, 42-32. It was looking that way, the way Michigan State was easily able to move the ball. Now, granted, Ohio State did change their scheme in the second half, but why not run that fucking scheme all the time, Knowles? But again, Michigan State was also defeated in the minds. You could see it. Jeremy Birmingham on the podcast, one of the few like real pros when it comes to Ohio State insiders, like he said the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Again, it wasn't a perfect game, but I at least was glad that the defense, showed that they were opportunistic in some ways. Sometimes defenses have to do that. Even good defenses. I mean, at every level. I remember the Bengals defense a couple of years ago when they actually had a good defense. It's terrible this year. But that was one of their characteristics, is they were very opportunistic. You always knew as the team was driving that they had a chance to get a big, play for a loss, strip a fumble, get an interception. They're very opportunistic defense. And so it'd be good to see Ohio State's kind of develop that type of ability to do that because it's very helpful. And today is a very offensive game, and sometimes defenses need a little help. And they got some, they got a couple of breaks for sure. But ultimately, I'm at least glad to see that Knowles does have some other play calls other than what we saw against Marshall and the first part of Michigan State.
Michael, I want to get to the position group that you seem to be most, I'm trying to find the right word, most
concerned.
And well, no, you seem to be, you pay the most attention to this group.
Mm-hmm.
The linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
And my God, Alex Stiles sticks out like a sore thumb, man. That guy, what are we waiting for? Get this motherfucker on the bench. He's just doesn't play with any leverage. He misses tackles. Yeah, he had the one sack, I think, in the second. I don't remember when it was, but I don't know who you put there, but find somebody else. Michael, what are your thoughts, man? I know you watch it because a lot of Michigan State's good runs came off of just terrible angles by our linebackers, man.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you say? I mean, that says it all. They were able to, I guess, give some different looks and kind of stifle the running game as the game went. But when it was just kind of mano a mano, I mean, we weren't there again like we need to be. Still, that's a problem. It's a problem that hasn't become too big of a problem thus far because we haven't played, extremely talented teams. I think Iowa is as good a team, maybe better team than anybody we've played in some ways. And then, of course, Oregon's coming here right up the road, which is certainly going to be the best team that we have played. So will it, be a big problem? We'll find out, but we'll continue to monitor it. But it is, I don't think it's anything that's going to be fixed as long as Styles is out there.
Yeah, Arvell Reese needs to start. I did see him starting, but they were in a 4-3, which is kind of good, but they were playing such a soft 4-3 and not attacking. But they need somebody in there, Gabe Powers maybe, who can just, has linebacker instincts, who can run. I mean, yeah, it is asking for a lot, but this is Ohio State. This is a rare breed to have, but they shouldn't be rare at Ohio State. Ohio State should have linebackers that are big, long, athletic, fast, and instinctual. They should have them at Ohio State. Georgia has them. Alabama has them. Why can't Ohio State have a couple linebackers like that? It seems like you get the guys like Eichenberg who are too slow to make plays but are instinctual great. But then you have guys like CJ Hicks and Alex Styles who are like big and athletic and everything, fast, but have just no instincts. It's like, can you combine them? Can they do like a fusion technique like in Dragon Ball Z or something?
Yeah, I mean, just of what we have to fix the problem this year, I have seen Arvell Reese show some signs of being pretty athletic and also displaying some good instincts. So I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if he just doesn't do it enough in practice, or I don't know if he doesn't, something's not making them happy or whatever the case may be. But maybe it's just the fact that Styles is a 99 4-star that had a lot of hype, and sometimes coaches have a hard time sitting that guy down. I don't know. I don't know what the problem is, but yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Linebacker continues to be a question mark. Well, it's not really a question mark. It's going to kind of be a problem for a little bit until they can get something figured out.
Yeah, and it's the Ohio kids struggling, man. It's like Ohio football sucks as is. Massillon lost to Matha, by the way, on Friday. Another loss for the best team in Ohio against an out-of-state team. So there's that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm starting to really wonder if Ohio State should just stop and recruiting all Ohio altogether, because the state really isn't giving us our best players anymore. Like we used to have some diamonds in the rough, but we're not even getting those anymore from our state. So I don't know. Moving on to the secondary, man. Yeah, Caleb Downs, was spectacular when they used him correctly. The corners, I think they're good, but they're just not featured until the second half. We actually started blitzing more in the second half. Thank God, getting on Aiden Childs, throws that interception to Denzel Burke. So why we're not in press coverage the entire game? Again, you don't have to be in press coverage the entire game, but you should never be 10 yards off the wide receiver if you're Ohio State. Never fucking ever. Ever. Never, ever.
Yeah. I don't know what that's all about. That's seemingly a little bit too conservative for the talent that you have. It's like, come on, Jim. I mean, now is when you have some of the talent that you can do some of the things that you were trying to do a few years ago when you didn't have the talent to do it and we're trying to do it. It's like, let's get it all on the same track here. I think they've got, the ability to be a little more risky on defense and I don't even say risky, just be more aggressive. They've got the players that they can do it. And hopefully, this will be something that makes Knowles realize that, and he continues to call some better games from here on out.
I don't know. He calls defense. I mean, let's be real. He calls defense like a bitch. In the second half, it was much better, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he needs to call the entire second half needs to be called the entire game. There's no reason not to. Maybe if you get a big lead, then you resort to playing a little more off or whatever, but right. I don't know. Michael, yeah, I think that covers a Michigan State game. All in all, it was, it was fine. I don't like that Michigan State moved the ball as much as they did. Ohio State is very fortunate that the score was a lot closer than the actual score. The game was a lot closer than what the actual score was, is what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, could it have ended up in a similar fashion if Ohio State has to play the starters the entire way? Maybe. I don't know, but yeah, Michigan State really did themselves no favors with all the turnovers and then getting screwed on the face mask call. Iowa next week, I believe it's at 3:30 on CBS. It's a home game. I think Ohio State's wearing the all gray jerseys, which is cool. Gray is an actual color of ours. I have no problem with that, but ditch the black jerseys. They suck. I don't want to see them anymore. It's not an official team color. So why we do it, I have no freaking clue. But Michael, any thoughts on Iowa? What they have? Have you watched them much this year? Any quick preview you can give us?
I mean, yeah, I watched them a little bit against Iowa State. I haven't really dug into them enough to say that I'm super well informed on the Iowa team. But I mean, generally speaking, what I saw was pretty indicative of what I probably expected to see, and that is a team that struggles to score. I don't think the defense is going to have a problem with this offense. I mean, the defense is not bad. I mean, it's certainly a solid defense. Athletically, obviously, there's not the matchup across the board with Ohio State, and it's kind of a typical Ohio State Iowa game, except this Iowa team doesn't. The matchup doesn't really concern me. Obviously, they got to go out and play well, but I think that they're going to handle Iowa. Not, I won't say with ease, but I think it's. I don't think it's going to be a game that we get concerned about.
Iowa, all things considered, I'll be real. I don't think they're as good as Michigan State. I think the game might end up being closer than Michigan State just for the sole fact that Iowa, I don't believe, is going to make the same mistakes that Michigan State did.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Michigan State's a better team. Michigan State's better receiver. Michigan State has a better quarterback. Michigan State might not have quite as good of a defense, but Iowa, I think Ohio State should handle them, but Iowa's, a well-coached team. Caleb Johnson is their best player. So Caleb Johnson is from Hamilton, Ohio. Do you remember him?
No, I don't.
Running back. He's like their best player. He's
Okay.
a beast. I don't know what high school he went to, but he's a monster. Their quarterback, Cade McNamara, former Michigan quarterback. He's not very good. I do know that they also have the Ohio State receiver that transferred there a while back. His name is escaping me now. He was a pretty highly sought after recruit. Caleb, I think it was. Oh man, the name escapes me, But there was like another Caleb. I forget his name. But yeah, it's just they're not very good on offense. Defensively, they're still good, but they're not as good as they have been. Like Iowa State diced them up in their game, especially through the air. I don't know if you watched that game at all.
Yeah, I did. I did watch that a bit. Obviously, they lost that game. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing that scares me or concerns me. Obviously, they just got to go out and play. I mean, if they play anywhere near the level that I would say even they played last week, then there's not going to be anything to worry about. And
Caleb Brown. Caleb Brown is the name. The receiver that transferred from Ohio State to Iowa. Caleb Brown.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree. I don't think there's much to worry about. I think Ohio State handles them. The line is 17.5.
Mm-hmm.
So, Michael, I don't really have much else. Do you have a prediction on this game? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I do have a prediction on the game. And my prediction on this Iowa-Ohio State game is 34-10 Ohio State.
I am going to go Ohio State 31-13.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. There we have
like
it.
That.
All right. Well, that concludes it. Thank you for watching the Monday episode, and we'll be back with our Big Ten episode later this week. All right. See you soon.